Oh, here we are again, and we're going to just catch us up real quick here. So I've worked the pieces that we were talking about earlier this morning into, or early this afternoon, whichever one it was. I think it was morning. Anyway, and our amber looks good. We've got our little red dot here, little orangish red dot, one there. And I was trying to talk earlier, and I forgot about what I wanted to mention, but this one at a time method is allowing me to keep these lines super straight. Super straight. So when I put this one in, and then I put the lead in, got it good and straight, I think I took a measurement. Let me show you how I'm doing that. So you always know, here I am looking for that little, here it is. I have two of these. I'm hunting for them all the time. Okay, and so this always lets me know how I'm doing, and I'll take a measurement from the edge of the piece to here, the edge from here to here, here to here. Make sure I'm staying right on the money. This thing's on the money. Same here. I'll take a measurement there to there, there to there. That allows me to, or guides me that as I'm working on this thing, I'm staying super straight. And if we look down that line right there, and this is a narrow piece, so it's easy to see if you're out. You can see how straight we are, and then again, how straight we are. So this is the foundation right here of the rest of this piece. Now, here's an interesting aspect that I think if people have been doing this for any length of time, they might have be thinking about. But since this field inside of here is going to be this glass, you want uniformity in this field. It is a variegated green and ivory with a little bit of amber base in here. But what you want to think about now is that we're going to build this whole thing across here. We could go to here and down to here. We wouldn't put this one in yet because we're going to do the top all the way across. But what I'm getting at is that we're going to build this thing all the way to here, all the way across, right to there, right to there. And the reason we're going to do that is because when we set this up, we're real conscious we want these lines super straight. So now working across here, we'll be able to keep the lines straight because we can take measurements off this left side as we go, making sure that we're right on the money. And then when we get up to here, we've got all this ornate work here to do, but we have a basis to set it in. So that if we came across here and just went across here like this, I think I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so I wouldn't necessarily do that. But there's a tendency for these things to move just a little bit. It's much easier if you can get this glass right on top of your cartoon all the way across. Then we've got a beautiful foundation to set this thing in and make sure that it's level. Okay, now the next thing that you want to take into consideration is I think that back many years ago when I was first doing this, or in the early days, I'm working with this opalescent variegated 2-3 color glass, and I just start whacking out these pieces to fit this thing. And, you know, that worked. And it looked fine, and 99 people walking by it wouldn't know the difference. But what we do now when you want to level or up the level of your game is that we want all these pieces to be book matched. In other words, we want these pieces, all these pieces, to come from the same part of that sheet. All right, right next to each other. So what that does, it ramps up the need for you to have some serious skill, but there's a way to do this, and let me show you something. So what I did is I took a piece of tracing paper and I set it down to get a rough idea of what I need as far as this whole chunk of glass goes. And I've kind of overlapped down here to give myself a little bit of room, 1/4 inch or so toward the bottom. And I gave myself a little bit here. So if you see, I've got a little bit of overlap here. I don't want to cut this thing too short. All right. And see, then I gave myself another 1/4 inch on the pattern to ride across the bottom of this design. Now it's about 13 inches across here. And that includes this right here, which would be amber. So we're going to need less than 13 inches of glass across here. So now there's the shape of glass that we need right there. So come over to the sheet and you lay that thing down, and there we are. Now, just barely made it, but bear in mind that we've got that 15 millimeter bar running up the center. So in reality, we're probably like about right there. So what I'm going to do is take this paper here, right here, lay it down square across there, and I'll run my glass cutter across here, and I'll cut this piece out. There's my piece. And now you're book matched. Every single piece will be in a line. All the collar, everything is set up, everything on top of it. So it's perfect. Now that's going to require you not to make any mistakes. Now if you make a mistake and you screw a piece up, which I could certainly do that, you know, you can get another piece out of that sheet close enough, but it won't have the level of craftsmanship that it would have if you were able to get every one of these 12 pieces. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I'm relatively confident that I can get that. The only fly in the ointment is this little hook right here. That's not a big deal right there. If you're real worried about getting this thing out of here, I can tell you a couple of ways to shortcut yourself out of there. Now, I'm just going to cut that out of there. Not that hard a cut. But if you're really worried about that thing, you'd take your glass and come here and put your cut there and work this thing down. You could, you know, a lot of grinding. You could give yourself enough room here before you got down into this thing and then grind that out. I wouldn't, you know, that's, if you're a decent cutter, you wouldn't have to do that. If you're a decent cutter, you'll just cut this thing out. But that's the only place where you could probably go south on this thing. These little undulations up here are not a problem. So that's what we want to do. We want these 12 pieces of glass to have come from exactly the same spot on that sheet of opalescent glass. If I do that and get that done, then that just adds another element of fine art or fine craftsmanship to this piece. Up here, I'm not too worried about these. Of course, we would want to stay in line. This color grain is running this way, so we would want to obviously stay in line. Now, I'll have right across the top of this thing, and what I'll most likely do is I'll leave this line here. It's going to be there, of course. And then I'll come and do all of this work here. And then this is going to be a different color of glass here. This is going to be some green with brown in it. So what I'm talking about is I still have this area here still on this sheet right above there. So when I get to this point, start adding these pieces in, I'll start looking for the extension of this piece to here. And that'll be easy enough to find. I'll be able to find that, and I'll also be looking for the one right above it. So what I'm trying to do is to keep this flow from here clear up to here, from here clear up to here, and from here to here. I want that flow to stay right on that sheet right there. So that's not that hard to do. You just have to think ahead just a little bit. And if you do that, if you can get yourself book matched down through this section here and book matched this section here, then you put in your floral work and your flowers and all that. If you book match this piece that will connect to this section, then you're going to have a window that looks like that someone that built that thing had some serious craftsmanship, some serious skills, because they thought ahead enough to just not make this a whole bunch of green glass, but to use it from the same sheet. And I'm telling you, like the average layman that walks by, it's not necessarily going to notice that, but it's part of the piece, and it just gives it a real beautiful finished look. So there's where we're headed. And if you've been doing this long enough, or if you'll listen to some of the stuff that I'm talking about, I'll take you to this next level. and I've got a couple of levels to get to myself, but that's, you know, we're trying to work, trying to get better. And every one of these pieces that you do, the lead one, the copper foil, I just finished 5 dragonflies. I was working as hard on the second dragonfly to make it better than the first one. I was working hard on the third one to make it better than the second one, and on and on. Every single piece you do, and I've been doing this for 47 years, every single piece you do, you're always striving to do a little bit better than you did on the one before. This is just an evolution of skills. And if, people that have been listening to me for the last, ever since COVID, so now we're about 3 years into this, I've never used the word master to describe my own abilities, because I don't think I'm a master. I don't think I'm going to live long enough to master this. I'm reasonably good at it, but I'm a long way from a master. So I'm trying to learn. There are people that have mastered this. I've said this before. I'm just not one of them. I'm working toward that, but I'm not there yet. I'm not trying to be humble about this. I'm just trying to tell the truth. So anyway, here we go. So this thing is really working out, and look down that line. In this one piece at a time method, I want to go back to that. When I cut this section of this thing out, then I'll come in here and I'll take a measurement. In fact, we could do it right now. I've lost this thing again. Okay, when I cut that whole section out, I'll come back and I'll look across here, and I need about, well, it's actually about real close to 51. So I'll probably cut that thing about right just a hair off of 50. Right a hair off of 50. And get myself a strip of this glass that's going to come right down through here. And once I get that in, then we'll cut this thing out. We'll drop the lead in, and we'll measure off this one. And we'll come in there and we'll compensate ever so slightly for the heart of that lead. And we'll just keep going across here, keeping these lines straight. So there's where we're headed. Okay, anyway, that's about all I have. I don't want to drag these things out for a half hour or so. Anybody that's following this thing to try to learn something about lead work is, you know, paying attention. And I'm paying attention too. And I elected here, I changed my mind. I was going to have this lead run all the way down. I decided to pick this lead up and run all the way to here. So see, we did this work here now. Because these lines are so straight here, when I solder this, and I love to solder this stuff, when I solder this, we're going to have this gorgeous super square area right here where everything fits. All these lines fit. You notice that I'm nice and tight. You know, now see, here's attention to detail. I've lost my, here it is. Okay, it appears to me, I'd have to turn, you can turn this thing sideways. There, right there. See that line up right there? That's real close, but not quite close enough. So what we need to do here, most likely I'll pull this back out, and I need to get the grinder and take just a touch right off this little amber piece. See, because I'm off, but I'm not off much, but I'm off just enough that that lead is taking a slight, very slight move up. Boy, and we're looking at about a 0.5 millimeter. There it is. Well, let's push this back down. I should have a piece of lead holding this down. Now, if you look at that and say, well, it's good enough. In fact, it's really sticking out to me now. This is a narrower across here than it is right here. So all I have to do is just knock this down just a little bit right here. That'll pull this piece of lead down, and it'll straighten this piece up. So it's all about attention to detail. You look around, you see something that doesn't look right, fix it, because you just don't want to work past your mistakes and cover them up. Now, there are things that you can't help, and you know, it's not a big deal. But I'm just trying to get this straight, and that's not straight. Okay. Anyway, that's all I have. We'll come back when we start fitting this stuff into here. I'll set this camera up where we'll just start working these things in here one right after another, and I'll show you how to fit this stuff up real fast. Okay, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Always ask your questions. I'm here to answer them.